They were seconds away from killing him, until he revealed who his father was. Now, the government's deadliest assassin is coming for them all. The story begins with a high-stakes operation in motion. We see a convoy of vehicles belonging to a specialized DEA task force. Among them is Tony, a veteran officer, and his partner Ivan. The two aren't just colleagues, they are like brothers. During the drive, Ivan shares some life-changing news. He is going to be a father. Tony is genuinely moved, promising Ivan that the day the child is born will be the happiest day of his life. They reach their target, a high-level drug house. Tony, wanting to keep his friend safe, tells Ivan to stay with the perimeter team while he leads the raid inside. Tony's team moves with precision, clearing rooms and rounding up suspects. On the top floor, they find the kingpin and his accountant in the middle of a major transaction. Tony moves in to make the arrest, but he misses one critical detail: the bodyguard. This man is unervingly calm, a professional who doesn't blink at the sight of federal badges. In a split-second blur of violence, the bodyguard disarms Tony and opens fire on the team. In the chaos, the killer slips away and heads for the exit. Outside, Ivan is on the phone with his wife when the bodyguard emerges. Before Ivan can even react, the killer guns him down and vanishes into the night. Tony rushes out only to find his best friend dead, a man who will now never get to meet his child. On the other side of the map, we are introduced to Nick. He looks like an ordinary old man living on a modest boat, but his history is written in blood. Nick was once the government's most lethal Black Warrant assassin, a master sniper who could hit a target from miles away. His old contact, Francis, arrives with an offer. The government needs a specialist to handle a threat that the regular police can't touch. At first, Nick refuses, claiming his bones are too old and his life as a killer is retired. But Francis knows Nick's weakness: his family. Nick is broke, and his loved ones are struggling. Francis offers a deal: one last blacklist. It contains the names of the most dangerous drug lords in the country, men who are currently plotting to collapse the American economy. If Nick cleans the slate, his family will be set for life. Nick looks at the list, finds his focus, and agrees to pick up his rifle one last time. Meanwhile, back at the DEA, Tony is a ghost of his former self. He is consumed by grief and a burning need for justice. The entire office knows that Tony isn't just looking for a criminal anymore. He's looking for a way to balance the scales for Ivan. Tony's boss sees the grief in his eyes and tries to bench him, suggesting he take some time off. But Tony refuses. For him, the only way to heal is to finish the job. His resolve is hardened when Ivan's grieving widow visits the office. She hugs Tony and gives him a final cold request: "The man who killed my husband, never let him breathe again." Tony and his team turn their attention to the drug dealer they captured during the raid. They know he's a small piece of a much larger puzzle. The dealer is arrogant. He claims his boss is more powerful than anyone they've ever faced, with a plan that will change the country forever. But he won't talk for free. He demands a 5-star hotel, full immunity, and luxury treatment before he opens his mouth. Tony's boss reluctantly agrees, but Tony is disgusted. He doesn't trust a criminal who negotiates with his partner's blood still fresh on the floor. On the other side of town, we see the master sniper, Nick, back in his element. He prepares his vintage weapons with the steady hands of a craftsman. To stay invisible, he changes his license plates and arrives at the hotel disguised as a harmless tourist. He stops for a coconut water, acting like a retiree on vacation, while his golf bag hides a high-caliber rifle. He moves to the roof of a nearby building and sets up his nest, waiting for the measurement. Inside the hotel, the dealer is enjoying a massage, thinking he's safe. Tony walks in and cuts the party short. The vacation is over, Tony tells him. It's time to go back to a real cell. They lead the dealer out to the car, surrounded by DEA security. But as soon as the dealer steps into the open, a single bullet cracks through the air. Nick's shot is perfect, a clean headshot that drops the dealer instantly. Panic erupts. The DEA team has no idea where the shot came from, but Tony's instincts are sharp. He spots the vantage point and sprints toward the building. By the time he arrives, Nick is already walking away. Because he looks like a frail old man, the police ignore him, letting the world's most dangerous assassin walk right past them. Frustrated, Tony meets with his boss. Their only lead is dead. They decide to pivot their focus to the dealer's accountant, setting up high-tech surveillance. They can see his every move, but they can't hear his conversations. To understand the master plan, Tony needs to plant a microphone in a high-security VIP lounge. Just as he's realized he can't get inside, he spots a woman named Mina. Tony realizes that Mina is the key, a specialist of a different kind who can get him the access he needs. Tony realizes that the direct approach won't work, so he begins following Mina. She's cautious and ignores his advances until Tony is forced to show his hand. He reveals he is a federal agent and explains the stakes. Dangerous men are using her hotel to plot a national catastrophe. He needs her to plant a listening device in a restricted VIP suite. At first, Mina is terrified. Getting caught means losing her job, or worse, her life. But Tony's conviction sways her. She agrees to be his inside specialist. Back at the surveillance van, Tony watches the CCTV footage with bated breath. Mina moves with nerves of steel, successfully planting the bug. Finally, the DEA can hear everything. The target is Hussein bin Fari, a global arms dealer and narco-terrorist. Through the mic, Hussein reveals a terrifying master plan. He has hired a scientist to build a device capable of collapsing the entire American power grid in an instant, plunging the country into darkness and economic ruin. But Tony isn't the only one watching the suite. Nick has moved into position. Disguised with a simple cap and using the emergency exits, the veteran assassin enters the hotel like a ghost. Just as Hussein is discussing the final phase of his plan, Nick strikes. In a blur of professional violence, he clears the room, leaving only bodies behind. Tony hears the gunfire through the mic and sprints toward the hotel, but he's too late. Hussein and his lead scientist manage to escape through a back exit just seconds before Nick reached them. When Tony bursts into the room, he finds a slaughterhouse. He is baffled. Who is this ghost killing the most dangerous men in the world before the law can touch them? The next morning, the fallout begins. The hotel is locked down, and Mina finds herself out of a job, her worst fears realized. Meanwhile, in a hidden bunker, Hussein is losing his patience. He demands the destruction of America immediately. The scientist warns that the final components are expensive, demanding $50 million to finish the machine. Hussein doesn't blink. He agrees to the price. Tony's investigation leads him to an elite party hosted by Hussein's niece, Rashida. He infiltrates the event, trying to charm Rashida into giving up her uncle's location. She claims Hussein is a shadow who comes and goes as he pleases. But Hussein is watching from the security room. Beside him stands the same bodyguard who killed Ivan. The bodyguard recognizes Tony instantly and warns Hussein, "This man is a DEA agent. He's a threat." Hussein's order is simple: kill him. Kill everyone who knows we exist. As Tony scans the crowd, he spots a familiar face in the distance, the old man he's seen near every crime scene. It's Nick. Tony realizes the tourist is actually the assassin. He rushes to catch him, but Nick vanishes into the night once again. In the chaos of the party, Tony's eyes fall on one more person he didn't expect to see there: Mina, who is working the event as a chef. The pieces are all moving toward a final collision. Tony refuses to let the mystery of the old man go. He tails the shadow through the city, and despite the assassin's clever evasive maneuvers, Tony's specialized training pays off. He finally corners him. But when the man turns around, Tony's world stops. The legendary assassin he's been hunting is Nick, his own father. Years ago, Nick vanished, leaving a young Tony to fend for himself just after his mother had died. On his boat, Tony demands the truth, the anger of a lifetime boiling over. Why did he leave? Nick finally breaks his silence. He reveals he was a Black Warrant operator, a professional executioner for the government. His craft created enemies across the globe, and those enemies were the ones who murdered Tony's mother. Nick realized that as long as he stayed near his son, Tony was a target. He disappeared not out of cowardice, but to ensure Tony could have a future. "If you were in my position," Nick says, "you would have made the same measurement to save your child." Tony, looking at the man who sacrificed everything to keep him alive, finally understands the weight of the burden Nick has carried. They realize they are both specialists working toward the same goal: the elimination of Hussein bin Fari. Tony wants justice. Nick wants to clear the list and protect the country. As Tony prepares to leave, Nick hands him a clean, untraceable cell phone. "If you need the ghost, call this number," he says. But before the father and son can plan their next move, the enemy strikes. Hussein's bodyguard, the same professional who killed Ivan, ambushes them. He strikes Nick down and captures Tony before the veteran sniper can recover. Meanwhile, in a high-tech bunker, the clock is ticking. Hussein is furious, demanding the machine be activated immediately. The scientist warns him that the final calibration will take 24 hours. Hussein is interrupted by the news that they have Tony in custody. He enters the interrogation room and demands to know the identity of the ghost who slaughtered his men in the hotel. Tony, beaten but unbroken, looks the terrorist in the eye and laughs. "The man who killed your people isn't just an assassin," Tony says. "He's my father. And he's coming for you." Hussein doesn't believe Tony. He thinks the idea of a father and son duo is a joke, so he orders his men to begin the torture. He wants the truth, and he wants it slow. But Hussein made a fatal error. He underestimated the specialist. The phone Nick gave to Tony wasn't just for communication, it was a high-grade GPS beacon. Back at the ship, Nick regains consciousness and immediately locks onto the signal. He isn't just a father looking for his son, he is a professional hunter. Inside the bunker, the lights suddenly flicker and die, plunging the room into total darkness. Tony smiles through the pain. He knows exactly what that means. The ghost has arrived. Nick infiltrates the facility like a force of nature, moving through the shadows and leaving a trail of bodies in his wake. His precision is terrifying. Before the guards can even raise their weapons, they are neutralized. Sensing the shift in momentum, Hussein panics. He grabs the scientist and flees, leaving his men to be slaughtered. Nick reaches the interrogation room, cuts Tony loose, and the two escape just as the authorities arrive. The police find a scene of total devastation, but they also find the master machine. By seizing the device, the plan to collapse the American economy is officially dismantled. However, the war isn't over. Tony receives a chilling call from Mina's phone. It's the bodyguard, the man who killed Ivan. He has kidnapped Mina and uses her as leverage. "If you want to see this girl alive," he growls, "come to my coordinates. Now." Tony is ready to rush in blindly, driven by the need to save an innocent life. But Nick stops him. "Don't be a fool," Nick warns. "That's exactly what a professional wants you to do. If you go in alone, you're a dead man. We do this my way, the specialist's way." Tony listens, and they coordinate their approach. Tony arrives at the location and enters the lion's den, facing the bodyguard face to face. The bodyguard reveals he has pieced the puzzle together. "I know who your father is. I know he's the one who cleared our ranks. Call the ghost. Tell him to come here and face his own shadow." The standoff at the hideout is intense. The bodyguard thinks he has the upper hand, but he forgot that Nick is a master of the long game. From a concealed position, Nick fires a precision shot, hitting the bodyguard in the shoulder and disarming him instantly. Tony moves in, and the two engage in a brutal hand-to-hand struggle until Nick arrives to close the distance. Nick puts a gun to the bodyguard's head. He doesn't want to fight, he wants the location of Hussein bin Fari. The bodyguard, realized his employer's empire is crumbling, tries to negotiate. He offers to lead them to Hussein's private estate in exchange for $1 million and his freedom. Nick, the ultimate professional, agrees to the deal, but a specialist always has a hidden clause. Meanwhile, at Hussein's luxury villa, the villain's true colors are revealed. The scientist, terrified and exhausted, demands his payment so he can return to his family. But Hussein is a monster who doesn't pay for failure. Since the machine was seized by the police, he sees the scientist as a loose end. He pulls his weapon and executes the man in cold blood. Hussein's niece, Rashida, witnesses the murder, finally realizing that her uncle is not a businessman, but a cold-blooded killer. The bodyguard arrives at the gates with Nick. To get past the elite security, they use a Trojan horse tactic. The bodyguard claims he has captured Tony and brings in a heavy body bag. Once inside the main hall, the bag flies open. Tony emerges with his weapons drawn, and the father and son duo unleash a storm of professional gunfire. They move through the room with perfect synchronization, clearing Hussein's elite guards in seconds. Hussein, desperate and cornered, tries to lung at Nick with a blade. But Nick doesn't hesitate. He delivers a final, definitive shot to Hussein's head, ending the threat to the American economy forever. The bodyguard stands by, greedily demanding his $1 million. Nick looks at him and says, "I know exactly what you deserve." When the DEA and the police storm the villa, they find a scene of total victory. They discover a body bag left behind, but inside isn't a corpse, it's the bodyguard, bound and gagged. Nick and Tony ensured the man responsible for Ivan's death would face the one thing he feared most, a lifetime in a maximum security prison. Time passes, and the wounds begin to heal. We see Nick's ship anchored in a peaceful harbor. For the first time in decades, Nick is not a ghost, he is a grandfather. Tony is there with Mina, and they are joined by Ivan's widow and her newborn child. Tony delivers a final piece of good news. Ivan had a massive, specialist insurance policy that will ensure his child is raised with everything they need. The family Ivan died to protect is finally safe. As the sun sets, Tony's phone rings. It's Francis. I have a new Black Warrant, he says. A high-priority mission that only a team like yours can handle. Tony looks at his father, and the legend continues. In the world of Black Warrants, there is no such thing as a clean exit, only a job well done. Nick and Tony proved that when a father's experience meets a son's determination, no target is out of reach. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the Specialist's Code, make sure to hit that like button. Share this video with your fellow movie buffs and subscribe to CinemaNed for more epic breakdowns. We don't just watch the action, we analyze the craft. Stay safe, and keep watching.